So we're going to go ahead and take another look at the 2028 presidential election. So looking at this matchup, we see J.D. Vance versus Gavin Newsom. And what's really interesting about this is Gavin Newsom is starting to kind of put himself out there with all of the LA riots, you know, his governorship state in California. And the thing is he's not super popular in California. He's got about a 40 to 45% favorable rating in the state after 2022. And his national favorability rating polls anywhere from like 30 to 40% depending on the pollster you look at. So not a very strong national favorable rating. And then we have J.D. Vance, who is the sitting vice president of the United States, who is the, is a Republican. He, has grown up, sort of a younger, he's a younger candidate, unlike most of the GOP candidates recently. More millennial. He is from the Rust Belt area, specifically more so the kind of not Great Plains area, but so more the Midland area. He's from Kentucky, and then his family moved up to Ohio. And so he is from this Rust Belt area, for the most part, Midwest/Rust Belt area. And so he's got a lot of appeal in the states that Donald Trump over the past, 10 years has actually made into battleground states. And he won all three of them in the previous presidential election by under 2 points. And so this does put into question, what is the map going to look like in 4 years? And so I've developed a model which tracks every single county. It goes through all of the, counties, and you can shift based on demographics, and it kind of pops out this electoral map. And in this map, J.D. Vance is winning the national popular vote by 4 points. He's getting about 77 million votes, which is the same that Trump got. But Gavin Newsom's getting like 71 million, so 4 million less than Kamala Harris. And the third party turnout is like slightly higher. It's like about 4 million-ish. And so with that, you kind of have a map where J.D. Vance is winning quite easily, and they're both expected to win their party nominations according to the betting odds. And you can actually see Gavin Newsom took a little bit of a spike here after the No King riots. So, after the LA riots kind of started, his base has actually grown slightly on Calshi. So I find that to be quite interesting. And we can clearly see, based on the map here, this is the map that I do have for the matchup. And we can clearly see that Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, including that first congressional district, is still above 12 points. Kansas is the same thing, albeit it does actually move to the left from 2024. Vance wins it here by 14.5 points. Here was actually 16.1% for Trump. So Kansas has certain counties that are becoming more college educated. It's just they're becoming more democratic, more suburban whites. Some of these like progressive whites are kind of moving there, and there's a lot more college attainment there now. So the state is slowly trending in the Democratic column. Won't be a swing state next cycle, but in the 2030s, it could potentially become competitive depending on how the parties go. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina, Missouri, and Indiana are all in the safe column, including Alaska. Texas, Iowa, Ohio, and Florida are all in the plus 12 column for the Republican Party, as well as we can actually see here, Maine second won't be in the plus 12 column. It'll probably be a 10 to 11 point win for the Republican J.D. Vance. As for Gavin, California and Washington are still above 12 points. Same thing for Hawaii, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maryland, and D.C., and as well as Maine's first congressional district. But I actually think that's about it. I don't really think there's anywhere else except for Delaware, which is a 12.5 point win. Kamala Harris won the state by 14.7, so shifts to the right by like 2 points from the last cycle. So not a really big shift, but you can clearly see the electoral college advantage that JD has is quite significant compared to before, where when you look at the map, Donald Trump had 201 safe electoral votes. Now he's standing at 218, adding Ohio in the plus 12 column, which in this election, it's a 13.5-point win. In the last election, it was an 11.2 percentage point win. So, it becomes slightly more working class. Iowa barely shifts to the right. You do have some areas, in the country that shift a little bit left. Some of the rural counties do, just because, Vance is maxing out with the base of the Trump voter and the working class voter. They're not going to keep shifting right forever. So we do see some leftward movements in some parts of the country, but overall, Iowa's, overall movement is slightly towards the right by like 0.8%, give or take. So it does end up being in the safe Republican column there. Looking at the likely Republican states, Arizona and Nevada are the only ones that fall in this range. And you can see Arizona's a 9.5-point win. So this is a 4-point shift from Donald Trump's win in the last election when he won it by a lean margin of under 6 points, as well as Nevada when he won it by 3. You see like 3 and 4-point shifts respectively in these states. And what's really interesting is if you look at the county map, I mean, it's just a disaster there. I mean, you clearly see Vance wins Clark County. He did not win it. Donald Trump didn't win it in the last election. You can actually see that Trump got roughly, give or take, a little bit less than 500,000 votes there. Vance ends up getting, roughly, give or take, about 461,000. So he actually gets less votes than Trump there. But Gavin Newsom's turnout completely decreases in the state. And it has the majority of the votes in the state, by the way. Like literally most of the state vote comes from here. And even Washoe County, like if you look at Trump's vote totals here, like you have 127,000. Vance actually does better in Washoe County. He ends up getting about 135,000 votes in this projection. So his turnout in Clark does drop significantly, but Newsom gets way less votes than Harris. I mean, he literally drops almost 100,000 votes from Kamala Harris, like 80,000 votes. It's very, very bad. It's a very, very bad performance for Newsom, and that's why he ends up winning Vance wins the state by like 6.5. And then in Arizona, it's very simple. I mean, you clearly have some counties here that, everything else is safe except for Maricopa. Now Maricopa's a 9.5-point win, and Vance is basically getting like 1 million votes in Maricopa County. Donald Trump also got about 1 million votes, and we can actually see Vance gets slightly more votes than Donald Trump did in this map. But Newsom drops quite significantly in Maricopa. He drops like 100,000 votes from there. So that's why the state margin for Vance, is so much bigger. And we even see like Pima County is basically almost under 12 points. Here, it was like a 15-point win, 20-point win in this county, and now it only shows up as plus 14. So clearly there are some movements in the state that are helping Republicans, and Maricopa being the biggest shift here, to be quite frank with you. And it basically puts the state in a competitive territory. It basically makes those states not even battlegrounds anymore. Those are the only likely Republican states on the map, except for Maine second, which will be like a 10 to 11-point win there. Oregon will be in the likely column, as well as Colorado, Illinois, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island will all be likely in the Democratic column there, and they are much closer. Like Rhode Island is D plus 11.5. Kamala Harris in the last election won it by 13.5. So again, sort of like a 2-point shift there, roughly, give or take, or actually like 3 points, or like 2 to 3 points. But Connecticut, this is the one that shifts a lot. It's only an 8-point win for Gavin Newsom. I mean, that's very, very tight. And here is a 14.5-point win. So it actually shifts quite extensively. New York continues its rightward shift. It shifts like 2.5 points to the right. New Jersey even shifts like a point and change to the right. Vance doesn't necessarily crack in New Jersey, even 2 million votes. And Gavin actually does pretty decent in the state. He does pretty all right here, actually. But you will notice when you actually look at the county map here, like Bergen is Harris plus 3.4. Here it's basically like a point. And you see Passaic County, which Trump won by 3, Vance is winning it by about 5, and he flips Morris. Or actually, Morris gets slightly closer from 2024, so he actually loses ground there. Somerset is, you know, slightly more Democrat than the last election. So is Union. Like certain areas continue to shift left. Even like, you know, Hunterdon, you know, it's only a 4-point win for Vance, whereas Trump won it by 6 points here, 6.5. You know, Monmouth County is Trump plus 11. Here it's plus 13. Middlesex County actually ends up getting a little bit closer for Vance, so he improves there. But like, for example, like Cumberland, you know, some of these areas get a little bit more Republican, but you do have some areas that do shift a little bit left in the state, and that's why it doesn't become like a complete battleground. But like, even like looking at New York, this is really interesting because you can clearly see like it was a D plus 64 win. Vance is only, you know, losing it by 60. The Bronx, D plus, give or take, you know, 45. Now it's D plus 42. And the shifts will probably be bigger than this, by the way. Just FYI, I actually think it'd probably be a lot closer than that. The model is being improved on over time, and there will be something we add called an elasticity score, where basically all the counties shift more on average than the nation. Like all those border counties in Texas shift way more than the nation on average, and so they're going to be more likely to shift harder than other counties. So I just have to go ahead and do the math for all that, and it's going to take quite a while, but once that's done, the model will be even better and even more dynamic than this current version, where I think it's already a pretty dynamic model. The future model will be significantly more dynamic than this one, so I'll be really excited to kind of launch that as time goes on. But we clearly see here, like in New Jersey is slightly closer, but it's not in, you know, somewhat battleground territory. Even Maine drops below the 6-point threshold here, so that's that. And we see, you know, Virginia is under 6 points still. It shifts like 2 points away from Republicans. Vance gains with black voters more than Hispanics in this election, by the way. That's why New Mexico still falls in this lean Democrat category, and Minnesota basically doesn't even budge a hair. It literally stays the same from the last election. So Minnesota literally does not budge whatsoever. I mean, when you look at the state again, these, you know, counties are just so. Hennepin County, you know, D plus 42 here shows up as D plus 40. So like the city areas actually get a little bit closer. What ends up happening though is these suburban areas surrounding it actually get more Democrat. So like you clearly see this gets a little bit closer. Carver County is R plus 5. Here it's, you know, R plus 5.5. So they get slightly more Democratic. And so because of that, they kind of offset the gains that are made. And like even Lake is D plus 3. Here it's D plus 3.5. Clay County is actually more Democrat than the last election. So you clearly see that there is like a lot of problems here that are kind of happening. Like there are genuine problems that are occurring here for Republicans in Minnesota. Like even here, like R plus 5, and here it's like only half a point more Republican, but the Democratic county is basically the same from the last election. It's actually more Democrat. So you basically have like a wash in the state. Some of the rules get redder, some of the city areas get redder, some of the suburbans get more Democrat. It basically washes out there pretty much. Now, moving on to the battleground states for the Republicans, and we clearly see that there's not many left. Nebraska second is probably like a 5.5 point win for Gavin. New Hampshire is really tight. It's under 2 points. It's like a 1.5. It's a 12,000 vote win for Newsom. And this one, I actually think it's very possible that Vance would flip it against Newsom, given his appeal there. He was the one doing the rallies in New Hampshire this time. And so I think because of that, you could actually see some genuine appeal for Vance there. And then looking at, you know, North Carolina, a 5.5 point win, so it's a 2 point shift from 2024. In Pennsylvania, 3.5 point win, 3.7. So that's literally a 2-point shift there as well. And when you look at the map, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for the Democrats. Like Lackawanna County is basically tied. Monroe County is flipping to, is going Republican by a lot over 2 points. So is Northampton. It's a 4-point win. 4-point win in Bucks County, which was super close, is like a 2.5-point win. Even Lehigh is like kind of competitive. Dauphin County is like 2 points closer. Cumberland is interesting because it actually gets more Republican despite its leftward shift. And Philadelphia ends up getting like 4 points closer on the map. Erie County continues to shift Republican. Center County even flips by like 4 points, and that's where like UPenn is. So that's really interesting. And Allegheny is basically like 3 points more Republican. So the whole state on average ends up shifting Republican by quite a bit. Some of the rural counties do stall. Like they basically don't. A lot of the rural counties like pretty much don't move anymore. Like they'll move like barely in a direction or another. They're not going to really move that much. But at the end of the day, where the most of the gains are coming from are like the suburban and city areas. That's where Vance is mostly gaining in the state. And then you look at like Michigan. I mean, this state, took a really big turn. It actually shifted the most Republican out of the 3 Rust Belt states in 2024. And we see here that like Grand Traverse, Vance is still winning that one. I believe that is a Republican. It's a Democrat trending county. Like Trump won it by a lot in 2016. Like he killed it there. He killed it. Like it was crazy. He even won this county right here. Like he killed it in 2016. But that area has slowly started moving into the Democratic column where Trump barely won Grand Traverse County. Vance is winning it by like 1.2%. And like even Emmett County was like R plus 10. Here it's like a little bit closer. This county is like about this. It actually gets more Republican for Vance, and including this like Democrat county continues to shift. This county up here, R plus 9.5, it was 12.5 back in 2024. But for example, like you'll see some rural areas continue to shift Republican for Vance, which is a good thing, for Republicans. Macomb County is R plus 15 for Vance. So he does really well there. In Wayne is D plus 29 for Harris. Here it's only D plus 24. Like that is embarrassing. That is embarrassing for Gavin Newsom. I mean, Trump got 288,000 votes there. Vance is getting like 278. So not as much as Trump, but Gavin Newsom is getting like way less than Harris there. Like a lot less. Way less. And like even Muskegon County, still Republican. It's actually probably more Republican than it was back in 2024. Saginaw County, Trump plus 3.5. Here it's 5.1. Like these are like horrible results for Gavin. Like these are terrible results for Gavin in that state. So again, that's that, in Michigan and Pennsylvania. The final 2 states, which are 2-tilt Republican states, are Wisconsin and Georgia. Now Georgia basically is stagnant from 2024, literally moves to the right by like 0.3%. It barely moves whatsoever. But when you look at the state and you look at the turnout there, Vance gets about 2.3 million. So it actually drops off from the last election quite significantly. Like when you look at Fulton County here, like we'll go ahead and look at like these inner city Georgia counties. Fayette moves to the right by a bit. Vance actually ends up getting like slightly less votes than Trump there, but Newsom just falls off. Fulton, Vance, 134K. Here, Trump got 144K. But Gavin Newsom is getting like 347. So it's like 40,000 votes less there. Cobb County, you look at Vance's total, it's slightly less than before, but Newsom just completely drops off from Harris. Henry County, it's the same thing. Like looking at Henry, I mean, Newsom drops off like 13,000 votes there. And then Vance actually drops off like 10,000 from there, or like 8,000. So Vance isn't really gaining here. It's just Newsom is like completely like just plummeting in the state. Like he's just completely crashing in the state's like turnout. It's like really, really bad. Even some of these like black belt counties get more Republican. Warren is like slightly closer. You even have Sumner County basically be like a point and change for him. Like these are really close. And even like some of these like, again, some of these like rural black counties like Houston is R plus 13. It was R plus 11 here. Like these are just, they're not good results for him at all. They're just not. And like across the state, he isn't doing very well. The only places where he's really gaining is like some of the rural areas. And that's just because, you know, Vance, you know, is not getting the same turnout as Trump in some places. So that's like could explain the difference. But for 2028, Newsom is performing very badly there. Looking at Florida, this is really interesting. Vance basically just improves on Trump's margin, like pretty much. Like it's not super massive. Like Duval moves 4 points to the right, and it basically stays the same here. Seminole County 5.5. That's a pretty big win. Osceola County stays with Vance by 3.5. Orange County is basically 5 points closer, so that area is really tight right now. And then Miami-Dade's like R plus 15. So it basically ends up being like safe Republican. It shifts like another 4 points there. And what's really interesting is like if you look at Florida, Vance actually doesn't even do as well here as Trump did. He actually doesn't. Trump got 6.1 million here. Vance actually gets like 5.8. But the problem is Newsom drops like 400,000 from Harris. And the reason for this being is that Vance realistically isn't even as strong with Hispanics as I would say even Trump is in terms of like raw vote totals. He actually does better in Texas, which is interesting. So that's the thing. Like, I don't think he does as good with Hispanics as Trump does in like raw vote totals, but like with white voters, he does better than Trump to a degree, to an extent in certain places. So again, Georgia, you know, very, very close, but it narrowly stays. And then Wisconsin, it shifts to the right by like a point. Vance basically gains like a point here from 2024. It's a really tight state. The different areas in the state shift left, some shift right. Like Door County continues to shift left. These Republican counties here like continue to move to the left as well. I actually think they don't. They actually become more Republican in this matchup. But like Ozaki, funny enough, in this one, it only moves like a point to the right. Believe it or not, it actually moves slightly Republican. Then Racine and Kenosha get slightly more Republican. Rock County is D plus 5. Green is like base. It's actually more Democrat than the last election. Iowa County is actually slightly more Democratic. Dane, though, is like 3 points closer. Milwaukee is really interesting. Yeah, it's like 4 points closer than the last one. Columbia County is slightly closer. Sauk County is only R plus 1. Like, so Vance, funny enough, Vance actually doesn't do as well here as Trump does. And even like Vernon gets slightly closer. But like La Crosse and Eau Claire, they get like really tight. And Portage actually even flips for Vance here. And even in like this majority Asian county, it gets like a point where Democrat. Ashland, you know, a little bit closer there, you know, slightly more Democrat for, you know, Gavin up here. So like there's a lot of like boomer liberals that I think would actually associate with Gavin in the state. But then you have some areas that move Republican and the movements kind of cancel out and the turnout kind of cancels out. And so you end up getting Vance winning Wisconsin again. So the final map shows Vance winning 312 electoral votes to Gavin's 226. It's basically 2024 redux. It's a slightly better map for Republicans than the last election. No flips besides the possibility of New Hampshire. Again, this model will be developed over time. So once I apply the elasticity score to everything, it'll be really interesting to see how the counties actually move over time. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.